Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a Sunday night episode of the Wise Guys Sports Show here on the Wise Guys YouTube channel. I am one of your hosts. I am the Big Recon on Sports, Mike Martinez. And without further ado, let me bring in my co-host, Mr. JC Blue Note, Jim Carnegie, and James. So yesterday couldn't go because of some issues. So we decided to go tonight, thank God, because I would have taken a bath at what was our original Saturday night episode choice.
On both ends, it's Bobby was sick, and I was feeling really weird after effects of getting both my COVID and my flu shot on Friday.
Yeah, and of course Bobby's dealing with we've had two hurricanes roll through here, so all the pollen got jacked up, and
yeah,
he goes to school, and kids are germ factories. Although I would have taken a little bath last night with my boys losing to Oregon, which we'll get into in the first segment. But Jim, before we get into the show, I'd like to, if I may, take a shot across the bow of Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred. You slimy motherfucker. I have no problem paying $30 for the year, so I have the privilege of listening to a man who should be in multiple halls of fame as a broadcaster, Howie Rose, be the voice of my New York Mets. This scumbag sumbitch in New York City. I can't listen to Howie Rose for the NLCS. This is the first time in 9 years I've had a chance to listen to baseball this late in the season because the Mets aren't hot fucking garbage this year. I mean, they were, and then all of a sudden, between Grimace and songs and now pumpkins and what have you, we're in the NLCS against the Dodgers. But because Odyssey has purchased WCBS in New York, I am out of the area in which the game can be listened to. But I paid my money. These motherfuckers and Rob Manfred, you fucking money-hungry.
The guy is drunk, but there he goes.
I mean, I had the perfect setup tonight, James. I got the Fox broadcast on my television. I have
lying political ads and all.
Lying political ads and all, yes. I have us here with my earbuds in, and my watch right here plays media. I would have had the game right here. So I turn it on the MLB app now. And I hear Kevin Harlan calling the Giant Bengals game. Now, mind you, it's Kevin Harlan, so it gets a little bit of a pass. However, this is some fucking bullshit. That was a little hurtful.
That was more so directed at how Manfred fucked up.
I know, but still. Alex, I sent a snap out to people before I realized that, and Alex was like, "Oh, that's a great setup." And I went, "Go see what I tweeted." He just wrote back, "That's fucked, bro." So we got a packed at least a hat trick for everybody tonight with a lot of stuff going on, of course, in the world of sports. So, Jim, what do you say we get to the hat trick and I can start ranting about other things?
It's the three biggest topics in the world of sports from the last week. Get ready for the Wise Guys hat trick.
That was weird. I couldn't hear the intro video.
Yeah, if some of the graphics and things seem a little off, Restream changed their setup dramatically, and I only noticed it when I went live with the watch along for the Sabres game back on Thursday, and I'm still getting used to it. So there might be a couple of bugs worked out this and next week.
Well, I mean, as we get to the hat trick, we were going to talk about the AL and NLCSs. Both of us have skin in the game, really for the first time in a long time, Jim. It's the first time since 2016 that the Cleveland Guardians are in the American League Championship Series, and they got to play the fucking Yankees. Now let's go here. And let's talk about what everybody keeps talking about with the new Major League Baseball format. The top 2 seeds never get to the LCS. Well, the fucking American League is chalk. The 2 best teams in the American League, wire to wire, in my opinion.
And we're separated by a game in the final standings.
So it will open in New York tomorrow night. They have the primetime game as they move the Mets and Dodgers game 2 back to the early afternoon start in California, or mid-afternoon start in California, late afternoon start on the East Coast here. So let's talk about the ALCS real quick, because I think that's the one we all thought we were getting. As much as I am a homer, I don't think anybody thought we were getting Mets and Dodgers. So we'll spend a couple minutes on that next. But let's talk about the ALCS. Let's talk about a Cleveland team coming off a back-to-the-wall, really great response in beating the Detroit Tigers. And listen, you didn't think they were going to do it because you'd have to get Tariq Skubal at the Jake on Saturday.
In a game that was moved up 6 hours. The game was supposed to be at 7, and they moved it up to 1 because of impending weather rolling in. Now, a lot of people were saying, there is this impending weather. The Buckeyes game, which would have kicked off at about 7:30, but the rain did come to Cleveland, but it didn't actually start until about 8 or 9 last night. So it's, good on them, to do that, because if that game gets pushed any further, that game would have probably ended very, very late into the night, and it screws up the travel for either team having to get into New York, Sunday afternoon instead of late Saturday night.
Yeah, and even though I don't think they're going to travel until I don't think they travel till today either way.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Mets didn't fly to LA until yesterday. So let's talk about this series. Let's talk about a team that pitches better than the other. As the game 1 matchup has been announced, Webb against Rodon, which I like for the Guardians, to be honest with you. I don't think Carlos Rodon is that good. Plus, even though the Gardos have several of their key pieces in the lineup, being Stephen Kwan, Andres Jimenez, Josh Naylor, even Bo Naylor for that matter, all bat left-handed, they all hit lefties pretty good. Am I correct in that, or am I missing something?
You would be correct, and I think it's good that they run Alex Cobb out there, who let's also be honest, threw 2 innings in Game 5, in the start there, so it kind of makes sense. You run him short, you play the bullpen game with the best bullpen in baseball, and then take your chances in Game 1. Knowing it's a 7-game series, in this aspect, and especially with the momentum of Cleveland, not only getting to Tarek Skubal, but also basically knocking him around. I mean, tagging him for a grand slam on Thursday that he hadn't given up all year.
Yeah, Lane Thomas, you take, not for nothing, I will give one criticism here. Of this team that I'm praying, Jim. It's the first time in forever that I got a shot at what the World Series I have begged for 30 years. Lane Thomas needs to swing at the first pitch every fucking at bat. The 2 pitches I saw, he swung at the first pitch in Game 1, hit a 3-run bomb. He swung at the first pitch in that at bat in Game 5 and hit a fucking grand slam.
And that's what they said on the broadcast is Lane Thomas, looking at the first pitch, loves to swing at the first pitch. And quite honestly, it made sense just because you had just plunked, Kwan the bat before to bring in a run. You had nowhere to put Thomas, knowing he was going to swing first ball. And it just so happened the ball actually, went out of the damn park.
Yeah. And he hit it. And, oh, God. You know what one was more impressive? The one Fry hit in Game 4. That was a fucking moonshot.
Yeah.
And then the dude who hits a 2-run bomb to give you the lead drops down the bunt on the squeeze.
David Fry, yeah.
Oh my God! Listen, Stephen Vogt's pushing all the right buttons right now. Again, Mojo getting through I'm sorry, Detroit was a tougher opponent for either team than Kansas City was. I think for either team, whoever would have pulled them. I'm going to make a prediction here. I like the Gardos in 5.
I like them in 6.
Yeah, I don't think it gets back to New York because I think Garrett Cole's going to pitch game 2. And I think the Yankees will win game 2. And they're going to have to pitch him on short rest in game 5 to save their season, and he's not going to be able to do it. Having seen Garrett Cole twice this year when the Mets took all 4 in the Subway Series, he's not Garrett Cole. He obviously can't use Stickum anymore. But on top of that, his fastball is flat this year. It doesn't have the run it did. The slider's not as sharp. Even his curveball, because he throws both, doesn't bend as much, and he takes so much off of it that you figure it would based on physics. But yeah, I like the Gardos in 5. I think you have a staff in Cleveland that will keep the ball in the ballpark, which is the one thing the Yankees can't afford not to do is hit home runs.
And that's what I like as well. I just kind of wish that the Guardians would have had home field here, because it's going to get very, very cold in Cleveland for this time of year. They're talking like unseasonably cold, to where tomorrow's high is only going to be 53. It's going to be in the upper 40s really through most of the rest of the week, but it's going to get back up into the 50s and 60s by the time they're back here next weekend. So it would have been absolutely perfect for that game to be here, because that would have kept the ball down for a Yankee team that loves to jack the ball out of the park and doesn't hit that well for average when they don't.
Not only that, having 4 games in Cleveland as opposed to New York means pop-ups down the right field line aren't going to go out either. Let's just call it what it is. It's a fucking Little League field.
When I actually hear the announcers on Browns radio, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, talk about Phillies baseball field, being a bandbox. What is Yankee Stadium?
Williamsport. That's what it is. So I like the Gardos in 5. And most importantly, can we have the Wild Thing entrance every game for Emmanuel Clase, please?
Only if he's not expected to throw 6-out saves in this series.
I don't think, unless it's a clincher, I don't think Stephen Vogt's ever going to do that again. I think you were in a game 5.
No reason he should have been run out there in the 9th on Saturday.
I don't think you pull him at that point in time, to be honest with you. I'm going to take the other side of that coin from you there. I honestly believe that was the right thing to do. That's the best pitcher on your staff. You want him facing the middle part of that lineup, 4-run lead or not. You don't even take a chance, because if you burn him in the 8th, which was the right thing to do, to pitch him there, if you burn him in the 8th and they give up 5 runs in the 9th, your season's over. So you keep your biggest gun in, especially in a clincher like that. It's a winner take all. It's literally those games. It's not Tarek Skubal against Alex Cobb, and it's Johnny Holstaff against Johnny Holstaff. Because you can't worry about game 1 because if you don't get there. So, that's just me. That's every clincher I've ever seen that's been a decisive game for 5 or 7 or even 3, like the Mets had to deal with in Milwaukee. That's a Johnny Holstaff game. That's his name.
But the problem I actually had with it is you expected him to do that in game 4 as well, and he gives up the 3-run jack in the 9th.
That's where I agree with you. He should have never done it 2 games in a row.
Right.
So see, that I agree with you. You can't do that. So no, I get you there. But let's go over the National League. Score update is 3-0 Dodgers after 2. Kodai Senga just doesn't have it tonight. What do you expect? He pitched 7 2/3 innings all year.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
And on 7 days rest after throwing 31 pitches in game 1 against the Phillies, you can't expect much. I'm sure David Peterson will be first out, and Sean Manaea is going to go tomorrow in game 2. But let's talk about these two teams. Let's talk about polar opposites. Let's talk about the Dodgers, who ran the division wire to wire, who no one thought was getting past the Padres. And compared to a Mets team that on May 31st were 24-35. And from that point on, June 1st on, the Mets have the best record in all of baseball. So the two teams, the comparisons aren't there. if you're going position by position, the Mets have the better starters by 2.5 runs a game. The Dodger bullpen, it's like playing against Cleveland. The bullpens are just lights out. Case in point, did you see the Dodgers threw a full bullpen game in a game 4 where they were down 2-1?
Right.
And held that
On the
Padres
road.
on the road and held that they held the Padres scoreless for 24 consecutive innings after game. That's almost fucking unheard of. That means the Padres scored early and often in game 3 and early in game 4. And after that, they didn't get shit.
I mean, the Guardians were right there on, with that. Is after the explosion, in the 7th inning in game 1, they were shut out in game 2, shut out in game 3, and then Fry hits the massive home run in the 7th.
Yeah, no, it's the bullpen of the Dodgers is formidable. But when you talk about starting pitching, I would have pitched Luis Severino tonight, to be brutally honest with you. As much as I love Kodai Senga, he hasn't pitched enough. He's coming off an injury. You're going to burn him for 2 innings or so, and now you're going to have to put a David Peterson in, who has been phenomenal for you out of the bullpen, and now he's got to throw shutout ball for 3 or 4 innings. He's got zero margin for error, even though it is only game 1. I think the Mets have to get one in LA this time to get back to New York. Not that I think they're going to push it to where they will not go back to LA. But instead of having to take all 3 to stay in the series, you only got to take 2 if you get one out in LA. But this is truly the great team against the hot team. And as much as I love my boys, they're the hot team. They're not the great team this time. I am still going to pick them to win this thing in 6. I just think that if they can jump all over the Dodgers starting staff, they can hold it and get W's here. Although that's not their MO in the playoffs, so I don't know what they're going to do. What are your thoughts on that series? Because I know you hate both teams.
I got Dodgers in 5 in this one.
You don't
I think the Dodgers are just too good right now. There's just something, and quite honestly, I think they're better battle tested in these playoffs with the teams that they've faced. I think everyone was thinking San Diego, and held serve in game 4, held serve in game, obviously jumped out early, and we got to be honest, the Mets are playing with house money right now. So, and unfortunately, I think the clock is very, very quickly approaching midnight, for the team in Flushing. So it's gonna be, I'm hoping for a decent series, but I don't think it's gonna be a very long series. I really don't.
I only wish I hope it goes 6 either way. Because after the things the Mets have done, and we just got our first clinching of anything at Citi Field in 16 years that the ballpark's been open, with the beating the Phillies in 4. I hope it goes 6 games if your prediction comes true. I don't want to see them party on our field. But hey, not bad for a punt year, right? So but I am hoping that we get the World Series I've hoped for. And by the way, game 1 would be on a Friday night. We would have to have a little wager on that one, I think.
Are we going to make this like a governor's wager or a mayor's wager about like sending somebody 50 pounds of fish or something? Or
well, you'd get 50 Zaxby's wings if that's the case. Your volume is crazy high.
Yeah, I actually realized last week. I mean, as opposed to last week, I actually remembered to plug the microphone in this week. I didn't even realize it until I was disconnecting the equipment to cut the video the next morning.
Wait. So let's go a little bit behind the curtain here. Jim and I are getting set up for the show 2 weeks ago, and I go, fuck, my microphone fell apart. Oh my God! So that's the LCSs in a nutshell. There, Jim. What is topic number 2 this evening? Much better. College football week 7. Speaking of rough days, and actually, I can't get too pissed off. That was a great game. I DoorDash on the weekends and some nights during the week on the side. So last night with us canceling the show, I did DoorDash. I had Paul Keels on the radio. I still haven't had a chance to watch the replay, but I will, especially with that first series you were talking about earlier. But Oregon holds off Ohio State, a 32-31 winner at Autzen Stadium. First time in that stadium's history that they beat a top 3 team in the AP poll. Listen, I honestly believe that both teams will hold serve moving forward, and this will be the matchup in Indianapolis the first weekend of December, with both teams getting into the college football playoff. Obviously, the winner of that game will have the bye in the first round. But I can't get mad at last night. I can get mad at certain things. I can be a homer and be pissed about the call if I really wanted to. But the bottom line is this. You can't go into somebody's house, fuck up an onside kick, turn the ball over, and expect to win games. You can't. You just can't.
And also, you can't have your quarterback who probably
don't even
can tell time better. I mean, I put it out there earlier. It's like, can we maybe get him? I put it out there on social media. Can we maybe actually, when we're doing film study this week, that we put the big comfy couch there so he knows somebody who can tell time?
First of all, that one's on Ryan Day, because in the rule book, the minute he starts his slide, the ball is dead. There should have been a timeout called with 1 second left to give the kid a shot at a kick. So first of all, that's on Ryan Day. That timeout should have been called. 2, you can't have your quote-unquote number 1 corner give up 8 catches, 159 yards, and 2 touchdowns. If Denzel Burke makes one fucking play, Jim, that game's over. One play. One fucking stop. They got zero pressure on Dillon Gabriel. It
was obvious when he threw for 341 yards.
Not even that. Penix threw for 500 against that team a few years ago. Listen. But also, when he scored his rushing touchdown, the tackling was fucking terrible. Now, I'm going to be honest real quick. I got into it today with somebody about the replacing of Ryan Day, which, again, I understand. He's 1-7 against top 5 teams. By the way, multiple of those losses have come in the playoff. Most famously, Clemson on what honestly was a garbage call. That was a fumble. Against the Alabama team that was the entire first round of the NFL draft that year. And, of course, the loss to Georgia in the CFP just before I moved down here. And then you got the 3 losses to Fuckface and that team up north. But somebody said they needed to fire him. And they gave 3 possible options to replace him. You ready for this? Number 1 was Mike Vrabel, who we'll talk about in a minute. Number 2 was Urban Meyer.
He ain't walking back through that door.
I'm sorry. Can we say distraction?
He's got about as much chance of walking back into Columbus as Ron Zook and the old ball coach do in Gainesville.
And do you want to know who number 3 was? And I understand why you're not a fan anymore because of the fucking fan base. Number 3 was Dan Lanning. Jim.
Dan Lanning is the best coach in the country right now. You honestly think he wants to give up that job?
Jim. I understand why you stopped being a fan. Because let me tell you something. Anybody who takes this job after Ryan Day has got to deal with one of the most passionate, but at times stupidest fucking fan bases on the planet. Right? Only Ohio State would want to fire a guy who's got a 900 winning percentage. And don't say John Cooper did not have a 900 winning percentage.
Doesn't matter. John Cooper couldn't beat his rival. Ryan Day has got a better winning percentage, but can't do shit against the teams that he needs to win championships. He's the same guy only in basically, but you take the script and flip it. He's the same guy.
Yes, because John Cooper couldn't recruit offense, and Ryan Day can't recruit defense. So let's be straight. The reason Urban was so dominant at Ohio State is because not only did he bring in offensive players who could play in his system and play well, and then when Day came in as the OC and chief offensive recruiter, that's when you saw the cavalcade of quarterbacks start coming in. The Dwayne Haskins, the CJ Stroud, the Justin Fields. But Urban could recruit on the defensive side of the ball. Urban always had dogs, whether it was a pass rusher or a dominant corner. Ryan Day hasn't had that. It's on him.
I'm gonna make one comment about this, and then I'm actually I'm gonna move out of the conversation.
I want to move on too.
Get your pound of flesh in, but circle your calendars for the Ohio when the Buckeyes head to Happy Valley. They lose that
November
game.
2nd.
Ryan Day's fate is sealed.
I don't think they will. I think they beat Penn State.
I'm saying if they do, that's 2 losses in conference, and basically if those teams run out, you're not even playing in the conference championship game, which means at best you might be a 10 seed
or the 11,
maybe.
I will say this: Penn State had a hard time with a USC team that got blown out by Minnesota. I look, Happy Valley's a different animal, but they are.
They win ugly, but they win.
And that's all that matters. And that's the other thing that this fan base can't seem to get. It doesn't matter how the fuck you win or about how many you fucking win by. Win the fucking game. That should be on the soundboard too. You play to win the game. And that's all I had to say about that. Did you see that the Texas players planted the flag at the Cotton Bowl on Baker's jersey?
Considering we'll talk about Baker here in a few minutes, he's lighting up the NFL right now.
No. Is it Schadenfreude that comes to mind when I think of Baker Mayfield, by the way?
All kidding aside, and your homerism aside, I don't see how anybody's going to beat Texas this year.
Nobody's. The only team that has a shot. And I will say that their conference schedule lines up very well for them because Bama's got to go to Texas and Georgia's got to go to Texas. If Texas had to come to Georgia, that'd be a different game. Because we all know teams at home, crowds, mojo. That's why I'm not worried about Saturday, because when that game's on a neutral site, that's a different animal. Side note, they play the clip from Animal House when they do Shout in Oregon. Love it. But I'm a zit. So, yes, they dominate the Red River, but yeah, they took out a Baker Mayfield, Oklahoma jersey, laid it on the fucking middle of the field, and planted the flag. I'm like, Baker's been gone it's been 6 years.
6 years.
What the fuck? Oh, by the way, speaking of Penn State and USC, a Penn State player tried to do that in the Coliseum yesterday. James Franklin took the flag from him and said, "Get this out of here." More respect for James Franklin than for Keegan-Michael Key, than I thought I'd have. But yeah, it's going to be a great season in the Big Ten. I'm serious. It's going to be fun to watch. But let's talk about the last piece, which is my favorite piece that you and I have talked about this week. And that is both Navy and Army are in the top 25, undefeated, and are playing some inspired football. Did you see the quarterback from Army just basically put that dude's face in the fucking ground yesterday?
Yeah, considering it's the first bit of anything that an Army quarterback has basically done all year, because Army rushes for ace. And we're going to talk about why Army is number one in the country here in rushing in a minute. And the team that they're better than has basically got the Heisman winner right now. But Navy 5-0, non-ranked. Army 6-0, both move in. They were Army. They were the only two teams to come in to the polls this week that got announced for the AP poll. In the coaches poll, Army got in. Navy is not. Navy is actually ranked 28th. They're about 60 votes. They're about 45, 50 votes out of the top 25. Utah and Oklahoma drop completely out. Ole Miss drops 9 spots to number 18. SMU climbs 4 spots to number 21. But the big jump of the week was LSU jumping 5 spots to number 8.
Which I don't agree with. It's been a cupcake schedule. Yes, they beat Ole Miss in overtime yesterday, but they have only played one other good game, and they got beat. So, again, top 5 stayed pretty much the same. The difference is Oregon jumps to 2. Who went to 3? Georgia went to 3?
Penn State.
Penn State goes to 3. Ohio State's at 4. And Georgia's 5. Okay. So the top 5 basically remain unchanged. Georgia's got that test at Texas coming up. There's another team, by the way. They lose again in conference. And Bama runs the table. Texas is getting Bama. Oh, no, Bama can't run the table. They're going to get Texas. Although, wait, if they both have 2 conference losses, Bama has a tiebreaker. They go to the SEC championship game against Texas.
Right.
Okay. So, listen, college football, as much as people think it's going to be garbage because the 12-team playoff, it's going to take away from the regular season. Jim, I don't think it's going to do that. I think it's going to make things more intriguing as far as the seeding goes and as far as what these important games mean, especially with the expansion of the conferences.
And Miami's got themselves a test now because do not sleep on Clemson. Clemson woke up. Clemson is 5-1 after that opening week shellacking by Georgia.
Miami's going to beat them by 2 touchdowns.
I don't doubt that right now, but you never know late in the season. We talked the 2 service academies in the top 25. You and I talked briefly on the phone earlier today or you had sent me something on Friday in the office about possibly, what happens if I don't see how that's going to happen because of, well, here's the thing is that they're both part of the American Conference, which is part of the group of 5 or group of 6, whatever you want to call it. Somebody's going to get that bid, and they play on blue turf.
Here's the scenario I was talking about, and I don't know if Boise gets it, by the way.
Boise right now is 5-1, and their only loss on the season, even though that they played in the conference, was a last-second walk-off field goal against now the number 2 team in the country on the road.
But this is an interesting scenario. Is you have both teams run the table, and they both have a common opponent in Notre Dame, who shellacked Stanford, by the way. You have both these teams run the table, which means on December the 7th, very fitting, they would meet in the American Conference Championship game. And a week later would play each other again in the Army-Navy game. So here lies the question. Now, I grew up right around West Point. My first college football game ever was at Mikey Stadium against Army against Memphis, of all teams, where the person I grew up with is now the AD. Here's the interesting scenario for the playoff committee. You have Army wins the American Conference Championship game, and they lose to Navy the next week. Do you? I guess it won't matter because they're going to pick the 12-team playoff field after conference championship week because Army-Navy standalone. It's an interesting conundrum, though, because then you would have 2 service academies where their only loss was to each other. But I guess the 10th data point's the conference championship, right?
2 words. Ashton Genty.
He's nasty.
Ashton Genty has 1,248 rushing yards in 6 games. Boise's quarterback, Maddox Madsen, has 1,273 yards and 12 touchdowns. Ashton Genty has rushed for 17 touchdowns already.
Jesus.
Boise's toughest test of the remainder of their schedule will be next week when they go to Las Vegas to play UNLV, who is also 5-1. The rest of Boise's schedule, home to San Diego State, who is 3-3 right now, home to Nevada, who is 3-4, at San Jose State, who's suffered back-to-back losses, at Wyoming, who's 1-5, and then home to Oregon State, who is still technically part of that Pac-12 scenario. So Boise wins next week in Las Vegas. Boise's going to be 12-1. Boise's going to be 11-1 going into the WAC championship game, and Boise's going to get that Boise's going to get that group of 5 bid. I don't care who you are. There's no way that they're going to have a team that their only loss was to a national championship contender, and quite honestly, one of the top 3 favorites right now on the road on a last-second field goal with a running back who is currently ahead of Barry Sanders' record-breaking pace. And at this particular point, is probably going to end up winning the Heisman in a walk with 3 or 4 more games like this.
Or at the very minimum, should. Yeah, no, I think they get in, and then now it becomes they're going to end up being whatever seed they end up being, and they're going to have to go somewhere unless they give them a higher seed.
In perspective for a second, Ashton Genty leads the league in rushing at 1,248 yards. Number 2, Iowa's Caleb Johnson, 937 yards. He's over 250 yards. That's 2 games back of Ashton Genty right now.
That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. I can't even begin to tell you how crazy that is. It's just, those are some absolutely outstanding numbers that this Genty kid is putting up. You can't argue it. Last thing about college football this week, I wanted to touch on the listen. Is it just me, or is the SEC coming back to the rest of the world this year?
I think this NIL thing is, and my dad and I got into it on the phone a couple hours ago, and he calls me a hater about the team in Columbus, which I am, but the difference is I'm also a realist, and unfortunately, a lot of the times when you and I get into arguments and he and I get into arguments about that, you're trying to prop up your base because you're wearing those rose-colored glasses.
Well, scarlet colored anyway.
And sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees. You got to kind of take yourself out of the equation with that. But this whole thing was set up because of football and the NIL and the transfer portal and everything. And yet they throw a ton of money out there, but yet Ohio State's got the most expensive roster in the country. And until they really start putting like a salary cap on this, the best thing that college football can do is break away from the NCAA, because at this point, it's really, it's an absolute, joke how much parity there is out there. And there's really, outside of maybe a top 15 or 20 programs in the country, there's no parity at this particular point. There's no anywhere semblance of a level playing field. It looks like how the championship series are right now, where you've got the 3 most highest spending teams at the top, and then you've got the 4th team who might be the best team of all 4, who's got the 27th highest payroll in the country, playing with house money right now, even though they are that damn good. But yet they didn't actually go out and buy all this great talent. So where does all of this benefit college basketball, college baseball, college gymnastics, college hockey, really outside of some of these programs, like the USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon jumping to the Big Ten and making that kind of a little bit of a basketball super conference, realistically in name only. Texas and Oklahoma doesn't make the SEC a better conference. Stanford and Cal doesn't make the ACC a better basketball conference. It may be a better baseball conference. Absolutely, that does. But outside of football, where does any of this improve college sports?
It doesn't. I will say this. Remember who the highest earning NIL person is? It's Livy Dunn, and she's a gymnast. Paul
Skeens, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, right. But having said that, I don't like the NIL thing either. I don't. I mean, okay, let me say this.
Paying the players, but the problem is you've shot yourself in the foot. And my dad made a very good point about this, is that if you put a salary cap on this, there's no way, first of all, that's never going to happen, because now they've approached baseball territories, because by signing this deal, now they can't go into court and walk that back.
No, but the only thing I really like about the NIL is the game I finally bought. That's about it. Which, by the way, is the hardest fucking game I've ever played. What are you doing?
Nothing.
But having said that, paying the players, yes, college football is a billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar a year industry, and these kids are putting their well-being on the line. Absolutely pay them, absolutely, and that's at all levels of college athletics, if you ask me. Because let me tell you what the biggest moneymaker in the spring is, and that's the College World Series. The NCAA tournament is probably the most bet on and the most watched college event outside of, the playoff in Podunk, Alabama, because Saban had them in it every year. So do I agree with paying the players? Yes. Am I happy NIL is here because I get my game? Yes. Having said that, it's going from the ridiculous to the fucking sublime.
Exactly.
It really is.
I mean, think of that point alone, which you brought up with Livy Dunn. We talk about the NIL in college football and all the money that's getting thrown at these guys, and Ohio State having a $20 million payroll for a college team. But yet we have not heard massive NIL talk in college basketball. We have not heard about it in college baseball. And who are the three other largest NIL names realistically out there since the NIL became a thing? Caitlin Clark, Livy Dunn, Paige Beckers.
Now it's the girl from USC who just signed another deal with Nike.
Right. All females. And a lot of that is, it's about maybe 30% of their talent, 70% off of their social media presence.
Yeah, agreed.
Because they're all, I mean, yes, Caitlin Clark might be the exception she certainly was the exception to that rule, because she transcends everything. But, imagine had this been a thing with, her name is eluding me right now, the girl for the Sparks.
Cameron Brink.
It's think of the money Cameron Brink would have been made for, her modeling career. Livy Dunn making seven figures, was making more than her boyfriend, who's going to win Rookie of the Year in a walk here in a couple of weeks. Paige Beckers, arguably the best college player out there right now, going into her senior season, and is likely going to be a top 5 pick next year unless she suffers another injury.
Yeah. We could go to an entire show on NIL. We could, because both of us generally agree on the subject, and the things we disagree on, there's really not a wrong answer to it. Because unfortunately, this system was a necessary evil because of the greed and the stupidity of the NCAA. I mean, come on. We haven't had an NCAA game for 11 years because of the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit, because EA was using his actual fucking face and he wasn't getting paid for it.
Yeah.
He was absolutely right to complain about that and absolutely right to take him to court. But Ed, come on, man. You could have told him they could use the football game, dude. Come on.
And from things that we kind of differ on from time to time to something we can both absolutely agree on.
On a scale from 1 to 10, my friend, they're fucked. So, James, did you know that since his trade to Cleveland, Deshaun Watson has more settled lawsuits than he does touchdown passes?
Because he did not throw one today.
He's 5 behind. He has 19 touchdown passes in a Browns jersey. He now has 25 settled lawsuits in a Browns jersey.
Baker Mayfield has 14 touchdowns this year. Deshaun Watson in 2.5 seasons had 17.
Yeah. He's terrible. He's god awful. My two cousins in Ohio, my sister, we have a group chat. And my sister sent me a picture, which I forwarded to you. 2 things unavailable on Sundays. It was Chick-fil-A and Deshaun Watson. And then you added Hobby Lobby.
Yep.
My cousin Patrick, who was semi-happy about the deal, said it was brutal. And I sent a gif of Morticia Adams. And it basically says, watching while everyone gets their karma. Fuck you, Jimmy Haslam, you son of a bitch. We have, of course, the tweet of the Cleveland should kick in some tax money to send Osama bin Watson to Pyongyang, which I think we said it. I thought he said PF Chang's.
It's actually Pyeongchang, where they held the Olympics years ago.
It doesn't matter. So now, speaking of
168 yards, an average of 7.3 yards per attempt, sacked 5 times, which he now has a league high 31 sacks and a quarterback rating of 34.6, which is actually surprisingly good for him considering his last 2 games didn't add up to that combined.
Well, let's talk about this and let's put it out there. He's got no one to blame but his fucking self, because if he didn't get this deal, they could have a better offensive line. They could have a defense that had some kind of control to it besides from one year to the next. They could have offensive weapons that they didn't have to overpay for because they didn't have draft capital to go out and get them. So I don't care, Stefanski, Barry, Ken Dorsey's bitch ass, I don't care. Jim Schwartz, doesn't matter. Here's the bottom line. If Deshaun Watson didn't have this contract where, oh, by the way, if he gets cut, it is a $172 million dead cap hit, which means
for next season.
Which means if they cut him, the Browns are what, $150 million over the salary cap with the current deals they have on the books for players like, I don't know, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Jerry Jeudy's bitch ass. So basically, they'll be doing what the Philadelphia Eagles did in the late 70s, early 80s, and trying to find Vince Papale to come off the fucking deck in Cleveland.
Hey, that was a great movie.
It was a great movie, but to paraphrase another great Boston moment, Mark Wahlberg ain't walking through that door. I mean, I understand that it's a Browns town. I get it. I don't know if you saw Baker was on the podcast with Kluber and said the same thing you and I did, that they need the National Guard there if the Browns ever won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm firmly convinced, James, as much as I want it to happen for my friends and family who have been Browns fans their whole lives, who have lived and died with this franchise, it ain't going to fucking happen as long as that hillbilly fuck is in the owner's box. It's not going to happen. Think about this. Johnny Manziel snorted as much coke as the 86 Mets when he was in Cleveland, and he's still not the worst quarterback decision Jimmy Haslam has made.
You have to stop the Q-tip when there's resistance.
Is that for me or is that for Jimmy? You can hit it.
I'm here so I won't get fined.
I even knew what you were going to do. It's really bad that we know each other that well.
Yeah, that is very true.
So let me ask you this question. And this is serious. If you're looking to sign him long term, do you sit Nicholas Jamal Chubb the rest of this year to make sure he don't get his fucking knee whacked again behind this garbage offensive line and this piece of shit quarterback?
Well, Nicholas Jamal Chubb basically is limited practice, and Nicholas Jamal Chubb should be ready to go for next week at the stadium when they play Joe Nasty and the Cincinnati Bungles, who somehow, some way, still have a lead right now. But then again, they are playing the Giants.
Let me back up there. Another player who needs respect on his name for the shit show around him is Joe Burrow.
Understandable, but he's not Nicholas Jamal Chubb.
And he'll never be Nicholas Jamal Chubb, although he ran for 47 yards tonight for a touchdown. The fuck? What is going on with the world? that Joe Burrow.
I mean, the guy that the Browns gave up on, let me see if I can find let me read the thread that I put out there. My brother actually now also has the best tweet of the day. Sewers for Quinn Ewers.
I don't think Ewers is going to be a good pro. Yo, they're saying Harbaugh was exited with a heart arrhythmia.
No bueno, regardless of what you think of the guy.
No. Listen, I make jokes. I have opinions. You never want to see someone go through shit like that. Never. Never, ever. By the way, just real quick score update. It is 5-0 Dodgers.
Baker has 2 300-yard games this year. He has 14 touchdowns this year. The guy who replaced him in Cleveland has 17 and just shy of 2.5 seasons. Let that sink in while you're trying to defend the sexual predator they keep rolling out. Someone responds, it's infuriating. I says, actually, as Browns fans, we should feel sorry for guys like Nicholas Jamal Chubb and Miles, but the rest of the organization needs this to get much worse so they can finally see that they lost the locker room and the fan base if they try to run it back with him.
Here's the thing. And as much as I want him gone, as much as I need him gone, just for my own sanity, they can't. They can't get rid of him, Jim. They got to ride this out. And it's going to cost.
Denver paid $90 million for Russell Wilson to basically not even play a game for them and blew the whole thing up and are probably in a better situation now, even though Bo Nix just does not look comfortable enough yet. But the Denver Broncos are in a better position now for having cut ties with that toxicity level hanging over. You don't want the distraction.
Here's the problem, okay? And you ready for this? Russ's contract wasn't fully guaranteed. That's the problem. In order to make this work, two things have to happen. One, you have to find someone willing to do business with you after you fuck the quarterback market literally with nothing from Diddy's closet. And for Diddy's cellmate, nonetheless. You gave out a contract to a player that hadn't done shit. He won a division title. Oh, he won a division title a year Andrew Luck didn't fucking play. He won a passing title. Oh, his team was 4-12. And oh, by the way, he gave up on that team because he didn't get his fucking way and he's a little crybaby. No. And the problem is Jimmy Haslam did the worst Jerry Jones impersonation I've ever seen. And there have been some bad ones. And he made this deal. And Andrew Berry didn't have a say. And Kevin Stefanski didn't have a say. So your two-time coach of the year got his legs cut out from under him. You're saying, make it work with a guy who everybody and their mother knew wasn't going to be any fucking good when he came here. And two, your GM who has put together rosters, all due respect, that have been phenomenal with the handcuffing that he has had to deal with. They're going to be the sacrificial lambs. I said I'd mention Mike Vrabel in a few minutes.
Thank you. I was just going to bring that up before we ended up having to go to halftime here in a little bit.
But Mike Vrabel is in Cleveland for one reason on that staff. He is the heir apparent to Kevin Stefanski. It's not Jim Schwartz. Thank God it's not Ken fucking Dorsey.
Jim Schwartz will be it, but more so in an interim basis at that point if Stefanski gets axed mid-season. Although I would actually think at this point, if it goes this much worse, two things are going to have to happen. Number one, they're going to have to take the play calling away from Stefanski. But number two, and I posed the question to my dad, and I want to pose it to you now because I think I started asking it, and I think your phone connection started getting bad when we talked earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What ovation would be louder when they finally pull him for Jameis, or when Baker got the keys finally after Tyrod Taylor got injured on Thursday night? You're not allowed to play Marshawn here. Because this is a serious question right now.
It is a serious question. Jameis. I think Jameis will be a bigger ovation. Well, no, let me say this. I think they'll be pretty close to equal, and here's why. Both saved them from a horrible situation.
Because Baker actually came in with the losing streak, and immediately things turned around. I'm not saying the offense is going to look dramatically different when Jameis takes over, but first of all, Jameis, I mean, even though he hasn't played much in the last couple of years, couldn't be any worse than a guy who's only played 17, 18 games in the last 3 between suspension and injury. And, massive surgery to his throwing shoulder. But Jameis was successful in Tampa for a little bit. He was successful in New Orleans for a little bit. We all remember how successful he was in college. So was Deshaun. But Baker walked into a scenario that they had nowhere to go but up. And we all saw what happened. He did get kind of exposed the second year. There was no book out on him because they hadn't seen him really that first year. But Watson, the book's been out on him now for 3 years.
Well, I want you to think about something else with Baker. Now, and I said this, the first year with Stefanski, and I've said it now also in Tampa. Baker Mayfield with actual weapons and competent coaching is a hell of a quarterback. Think about it. Everybody says, if the Browns would have drafted Josh Allen, they would have been fine. They would have been a world beater. I don't think Josh Allen survives 4 head coaches and 4 offensive coordinators in 3 seasons.
I mean, Baker right now for overall passing yards is 10th in the NFL at 1,164. He's just ahead of Daniel Jones, and he's just behind Lamar Jackson. He's like 35 yards behind Lamar Jackson. His quarterback rating, as it's trying to sort right now, is 13th, so he's middle of the pack. But he's also thrown 12 touchdowns, which is tied with Sam Darnold and only one back of Joe Burrow, and he's only thrown 2 interceptions.
He threw a few today. He threw 2 or 3 today. So I think it's 18 now, and it's like 5 or 6. But having said that,
he's 1489 now. Yeah, because that actually was he's 1,489 yards, which technically right now is 10th, 15 touchdowns, tied for second, and 5 interceptions, tied for 36th.
Yeah. So what you're talking about is you're talking about a guy who's playing within the offense. You're talking about a guy who finally has
30 by next season already.
Yeah, but remember, Baker also walked on at 2 different schools.
Yeah.
I want to say Baker didn't graduate till 23, almost 24. So that's a different animal there too. But going back to him real quick, what he dealt with in Cleveland was almost criminal. Being brutally honest, a number one pick. I mean, what Caleb Williams walked into, Baker Mayfield probably would have gotten in line to kiss someone's ass to have.
I mean,
And he never. I don't care what you say about Odell Beckham. Baker Mayfield never had a number fucking one wide receiver in Cleveland, and he came within an eyelash of sending the fucking Chiefs home.
yeah, I mean, look at the game that they had today. New Orleans puts up 27 points in the second quarter, takes a 10-point lead in the halftime, and then Tampa wins by 24 today.
Blows the fucking doors off him. I mean, he was dropping dimes left, right, and center. Now, the bottom line is this with the Cleveland Browns. They do this to themselves. People say the Mets are going to Mets. Well, the Browns are going to Browns every fucking time. And it's only been since 99. Let's put this out there. As much as he is the most hated man in Cleveland sports history, Art Modell never had fucking teams like this. He did some stupid bonehead things. He absolutely did. He ran Jim Brown out of football, ran Paul Brown out of Cleveland. He never had teams that were this fucking horrific.
And let's rub salt in the wound a little bit more. I'm going to throw some numbers at you. 22 of 38, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Who was that?
Joe Flacco.
That was Joe Flacco in a 20-17 victory for the Colts today.
Kevin Stefanski's offense, when run correctly, do you know who the 3 most successful quarterbacks are?
Flacco,
Baker, Case Keenum.
Yeah, I forgot. I mean, I thought you were asking about like just the Browns, but yeah, you got to go back to Minnesota days too. Yeah.
He was the OC in Minnesota when they went to the NFC Championship game against that year's eventual Super Bowl winner in the Philadelphia Eagles. Case Keenum threw the pass to Stephon Diggs for the Minnesota Miracle. That was an update of some kind.
That was actually
Was that a dating app?
Ours for next week.
Oh, nice. Yay or nay?
Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make it, and I kind of want to see the whole comment real quick.
You're good. But to close the book on the Browns, thank God.
Take 10 seconds and read this.
Are you sending it to here?
No, I'm putting it in the chat.
All right. Did it say? Thanks, Patrick. He's also correct. He's also correct. So, Jim, we're at an hour. The next part isn't going to be as long as normal. So what do you say we hit halftime here and refill and come back?
Let's do it. It's you'll see a little bit of a different change here. Let me get the graphics off the screen, and hopefully our mics are not activated with this. So it's like I said, technical issues, aside, we'll work out some kinks, and we'll see you guys here in a few minutes.
I'm muting mine just to be safe.
Yeah, me too. And welcome back.
What the hell?
I can hear you.
I don't know why it just did that. Because I took
of modern technology.
I put the earbuds into charge during the thing, and I reconnected them and reconnected, but it still had automatic default of being something else to be the audio output. Yeah, I'm going to bed as soon as we're done because game one is basically over.
6-0.
6-0 Dodgers. Jack Flaherty's doing a great game. I got it. Just tip your hat. But hey, they lost games in the first two series. I still have hope. Of course, I've been a Met fan for my entire life. Hope is something I have way too often. Hey, we didn't get to one part in that last section on the Browns, and that was the question at the end. Is this the worst trade in sports history? Yes.
Keep in mind some of the other bad trades that there have been. Let's start with the NFL for a minute. Ricky Williams was productive for a few years after New Orleans basically sold the farm to go up and get him.
Mm-hmm.
Herschel Walker was productive for a few years in Dallas.
But were you in Minnesota? But yeah, no, that's I see what you're doing there for the teams that actually the teams that acquired the star. I mean, let's be honest, Jim. Not everyone is going to be the Lindor Jimenez trade, which has worked out well for both franchises. You have Nolan Ryan to the Angels for Jim Fregosi to the Mets. Fregosi, I think, played half a season. Nolan Ryan went on to win. Throw 7 no-hitters, win 300 games, and go to the Hall of Fame for 3 other teams. You have...
I've heard, just in the last week, I've heard, Seattle making the trades to go up and get Ryan Leaf. I've heard the Rams mortgaging 3 first-round picks to go get Sam Bradford. Those were disappointing. Watson is just abysmal.
It is. It is abysmal. I mean,
because the thing is that even though Bradford was very underwhelming, he still played for several years. Even though Ryan Leaf was terrible, he was serviceable for a year or two, and then you had medium level type talent going back the other way. You've gotten nothing out of Deshaun Watson for 3 years now, for 2.5 years, and yet the Houston Texans are loaded up to basically not even so much challenge to the Chiefs, but they're in the driver's seat in that division for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not so much how bad Watson has played; it's how bad Watson has played and what Houston has turned those draft picks into. Think about it. We were live for the draft reaction when they took C.J. Stroud at 2 and then traded a bunch of picks to Arizona and took Will Anderson at 3. Not only did they win the AFC South last year, they bounced the Browns from the playoffs. And it wasn't even Deshaun under center. But like I was saying before, the true impact is the contract. Because it goes hand in hand. Because not only did you send the 3 first-round picks plus other picks, you committed financially to a player that was coming off a year, and everybody said, oh, he was suspended. No, he wasn't suspended that first year, remember. 2021, he was not suspended. He was benched because he pissed and moaned. He didn't like what the front office did. And Bill O'Brien, who was the GM and head coach at the time, said, I don't give a shit what you like. You're under contract. You're going to play. And if you don't want to play, go home. Go the fuck home. And guess what? He chose to go home instead of play and have his teammates' backs.
I'm going to very quickly go over an article I just pulled up. I just did a search for worst trades in NBA history, and this website, givemesport.com, ranked the 10 worst. And I'm just going to go through them very quickly. We'll probably talk about the last 2 or 3. The Clippers trading Paul George from the Thunder, and the Thunder end up taking one of those picks and getting Shy. Pretty bad in the outset. The Rockets trading for an aging Charles Barkley from the Suns.
You know what, though? Barkley was still good for them. I don't agree with that.
The Bucks drafting Dirk and then flipping him on draft night to the Mavericks.
Horrific.
The Lakers trading for Russell Westbrook. That one was pretty bad.
Yeah. I think any of the trades involving Russell Westbrook are going to be pretty bad.
The Nets trading for the aging Celtics core.
I saw them play live. That was bad.
The 76ers trade Wilt to the Lakers, despite 3 consecutive MVPs.
Well, it's Philly. What do you expect?
Right. The Bucks trade Kareem to the Lakers.
Again, Milwaukee's going to Milwaukee.
The Sonics trading Scotty to the Bulls.
Yeah, that's a hindsight ranking. No one knew what Scotty was going to be then. Olden Polynice, who was the piece that went to Seattle, was a very good player for several years.
Second on this list, the Hawks trade Bill Russell to the Boston Celtics in the 1956 draft.
Yeah, that was bad.
And number 1, the Charlotte Hornets trading Kobe to the Lakers.
Yeah, but again,
that's bad. But I mean, the two at the top there are on the Mount Rushmore of greatest NBA players of all time. Those were bad trades. Were they the worst in the history of the NBA? Yes. Were they the most fleeced trades in the history of all sports? I don't even think either one of them makes the top 5.
No, and I will say this. Trading someone on draft night and the hindsight that comes with it are 2 different things.
Right.
Than what the Browns did. What the Browns did, because not only did they make the trade for Watson, and yes, the Texans could have botched those picks like so many teams have before, but let's again talk about the contract. Let's talk about the fact that you could not, or you will not, have a trade partner for Deshaun Watson because the entire NFL is pissed at you for giving him a fully guaranteed contract, which, by the way, for all the people in Cleveland, and yes, I'm talking to most of Brown's Twitter, you mouth fucking breathers. You forget. The Cleveland Browns were out. They were not being considered a landing spot for Deshaun Watson by him until they fully guaranteed the contract. So please stop trying to rewrite history. 2 things that Brown's Twitter constantly says that are out and out fucking wrong. 1, he was not suspended for 2021. He was benched. And 2, he was out on going to Cleveland and signing a contract until it became fully guaranteed.
I just did another search, and we might have another one entering the chat here. Worst trades in NHL history. Now, I'm not going to bring up all of these because some of these are more obscure names that you're probably not going to know. Me being the hockey, fanatic and somewhat historian that I am. Montreal trading Patrick Waugh to the Colorado Avalanche. The Winnipeg Jets trading Timu Solani to the Anaheim Mighty Ducks.
That's a name I remember.
The Vancouver Canucks trading Cam Neely and a first rounder to the Boston Bruins.
Cam Neely was in Vancouver.
Yes. The Islanders trading Zdeno Chara to the Ottawa Senators, who then in turn, winds up in Boston and has a Hall of Fame career.
Jesus.
Calgary trading Brett Hull to the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah.
Calgary trading Doug Gilmour to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Anything with Toronto.
Edmonton trades Mark Messier to the New York Rangers.
That was rough.
And then this is the one that's entered the chat. Another one that Edmonton made. You don't have to think very hard.
Gretzky. Okay, first of all, Gretzky forced their hand because of his marriage. Which, fine. I get it. That's why, because you want to talk about baseball trades that were bad. Let's talk about the one Cincinnati made to get Ken Griffey Jr. So that's a forced hand, as was Junior's. For the right reasons, but still a forced hand. I mean, you've seen, in baseball, if you pull up the 10 worst trades in baseball, you're going to see 2 on there with the New York Mets, actually 3.
I think the Gretzky trade is a little bit blown out of proportion when you sit back and you think about it. Let me break it down here for a second. The Oilers get 3 picks back. And according to this website, Jason Miller only played 6 games. Nick Standahar only played 2 games in the NHL. Martin Rucinski turned into a good player, but only played 2 games with the Oilers. And Gretzky, in 539 games with the Kings, scored 918 points, but he never got the Kings to a Stanley Cup, and I think only got them to the Stanley Cup Finals once. So realistically, you traded the greatest player in the history of the sport, but he never really got them to the promised land.
No. And again, it seems like people rank these trades not by what the teams did, but what the players ended up being. I mean, 2 prime examples, and I'm going to use it from my Mets, who are a hot topic right now. Ed Yarnall, Jeff Getz, and Preston Wilson to the Florida Marlins for Mike Piazza. That's who, and who. And Preston Wilson, of course, goes on to win a World Series with the Cardinals in 2006. But Mike Piazza is the greatest hitting catcher of all time. Then you have the Floyd Yeomans, Mike Fitzgerald, Hubie Brooks, and one other player to the Montreal Expos for Gary Carter, which backstops a world championship in New York in 1986. Or, like I mentioned, the Jim Fregosi and Nolan Ryan trade. There was one other one that was bad, like real bad.
Well, I just did a search, and Fox Sports actually gave their 15 worst trades of the past decade, and this was published back in August. I will run through these extremely fast. Braves getting Max Fried as part of the haul for Justin Upton.
Jesus.
The Blue Jays acquiring Josh Donaldson for Brett Lowry, Kendall Graveman, and some prospects.
Okay.
Giants getting Luis Castillo for Casey McGee.
Oh,
Padres getting Tatis for James Shields.
that was bad.
Astros getting Yordan Alvarez for Josh Fields.
That was worse.
The White Sox getting Dylan Cease and Eloy Jimenez for Jose Quintana. The
Don't
Marlins
disrespect
getting
my boy.
Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen for Marcelo Zuna.
Yeah.
The Brewers getting 3 prospects for Kristen Yelich.
Yeah.
The Rays getting Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows, and Pittsburgh gets Chris Archer.
Oh.
The Guardians get Clase and Kluber for they get Clase and Delino DeShields for Kluber and Cash.
Where'd they send Kluber? Was that Texas?
Texas. The Rangers get Adolis Garcia for Cash from the Cardinals.
Yeah.
The Rays get a Rosarena for Matthew Liberatore. The Dodgers get Mookie Betts and David Price for Alex Verdugo, Jeter Downs, and Connor Wong. The Royals.
Verdugo's with the Yankees. Is any of them even playing? Yeah, it's bad.
And that's it. I think the worst. Didn't I actually also see? Braves get Dansby Swanson for Shelby Miller.
That was fucking terrible. Do you know one that's going to come back, that's going to be on that list in 4 or 5 years? Is the Mets get Luis Angel Acuna for Max Scherzer.
Arguable, but yeah, I think Watson is easily the worst one in the NFL, and it's getting up there for the worst in the history of sports because of just the instant return on the draft picks and the cash considerations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, James, what's in the blast tonight? Speaking of your AEW thing, did you save that picture I sent you?
Yes.
So, I don't know if he's going to put it up, and if he doesn't, Jim being the ECW aficionado of the group, someone did the original ECW core players as the characters from Family Guy. And my favorite, my absolute favorite, was Stewie as Taz. Because they're about the same size. I didn't realize it was Tommy Dreamer. Joe was Tommy Dreamer. That's beautiful. And Quagmire as Sandman just kind of fits. And did you notice they had the dot in his head from breaking the beer cans?
Yep.
I mean,
but
Peter
Cleveland
and Cleveland.
The Dudleys.
It's easy. Who was Mr. Herbert?
Terry Funk.
And who was Chris?
I don't think Chris was in it. Because Brian was Rob Van Dam, and the chicken was Sabu.
Yep, the chicken was Sabu. I didn't even notice Brian. So AEW had a big weekend, huh?
Yeah, their Wrestle Dream pay-per-view in Tacoma for the second year in a row. Last year was the debut of Adam Copeland for the formerly Edge. This year brought back the return after nearly 13 months out, even though he was on TV for a little while, of one Mr. Adam Cole, Bebe, who basically ran off a returning Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who was off shooting scenes for Happy Gilmore 2.
MJF and Travis Kelce are in the same film.
Yes. Who had beaten down Daniel Garcia, got on the mic and found his Dynamite Diamond ring. And then here comes Cole out to a massive face pop. And I know we don't like to kind of, gossip on the show, but there's a long-standing idea in the last few months, and there were rumors that Adam Cole had moved back to Pennsylvania out of Florida to finish up his rehab, and he moved back alone, and those were founded. And somebody said that a very reputable source told him that him and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, are no longer together because she's turned into a head case. There were rumors that she was actually sent home for starting a massive argument with her and MJF over MJF's girlfriend, Alicia Atut, in the locker room shortly after her return. And I guess Adam Cole, real name Austin Jenkins, I guess Austin doesn't want to deal with it anymore. And yet they've been together forever.
So you're saying there's a chance for you to get with a wrestler?
Boom. I told you on the phone jokingly, I'd rather take my shot with Austin than Brett.
Nice.
Austin's a gamer. But we also saw on the pay-per-view the AEW World Championship change hands as Jon Moxley becomes the AEW champion for the fourth time, beating Bryan Danielson, who won the title at All In Wembley and dropped the title after just 50 days. But this was more important because this was the official end of the full-time in-ring career of the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson, a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure.
Going back to when he was Daniel Bryan in WWE, was phenomenal. Yes, that was pretty cool. I didn't see much. I don't follow much at all. I mean, I see stuff on YouTube, but speaking of, someone uploaded Benoit and against Jericho from the mid '90s at New Japan.
Yep. When Benoit was Pegasus Kid. Yep.
Crazy.
The hilarity, if you even want to call it that, is AEW lately. The Blackpool Combat Club is not called that anymore, and we kind of talked about that last week. But there's a new group, and I don't even know if they've got a name yet. But it's Moxley, it's Claudio Castagnoli, it's Pac, who everyone remembers as Neville from WWE, and Wheeler Yuta, who was starting to lean towards Bryan Danielson, in recent months. And what they've actually done is jump guys after their match and put plastic bags over their head to basically try and suffocate them to where fans are chanting, "This is murder." So essentially attempted murder, to where AEW has to take to their social media saying, due to the graphic nature, we will not show this. We will not put this clip up on social media, because they're one of the few companies that, even though they still have to pay for their pay-per-views, unlike WWE, who gives them away as part of the network, AEW still puts out a lot of highlights from things like right after the pay-per-view. So they're not showing these. So you got to see like fan cam stuff get uploaded.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you. Let's jump to the early season. I'm sorry. Anything else from AEW?
That would be it. It's because I didn't watch the whole pay-per-view. My girl Anna Jay, with a win on the pre-show, and they said that she's gotten phenomenally better after spending 2 months over in Japan as part of their I can't remember what the name of the tournament it is, but but usually they send, like, the American promotion send a gaijin or two over, and she has just gotten phenomenally better, just with 2 months over there. So good for her. But yes, early on in the NHL season, we're less than a week in, really officially for most teams. Some teams actually even didn't have their season debuts until Friday night. Actually, the LA Kings had their season debut when I was watching them on the live stream with everyone on Thursday night. But number one overall pick, Macklin Celebrini, already the injured reserve with a lower body injury, and captain of the world champion Panthers, Andrei Barkov, out for the next 2 to 3 weeks as well. So some significant injuries very early on here.
Yeah, and then one of the scariest things I've ever seen, Lauri Markkanen on skates.
Yeah, it's Utah blew it out for their debut, which they ended up winning 5-2 over Chicago. So how nice was that for them to do it against that franchise? I hate the fact that, like, 2 nights later they beat my Islanders in overtime.
Did you see the Hawks played Utah?
Oh, that was the season opener. Yes.
Get it? Hawks, Utah. A woman who is a hockey.
The crowd was loud. Apparently, they actually set a record for beer sales in a game, which still amazes me considering how dry of a state Utah is primarily, except for your major cities.
Do they know what beer is in Utah?
Yeah, that's true. That's argumentatively true. I guess there's like a custom goal horn, but yeah, 7-foot Laurie Markkinen comes out and drops the puck with owners Ryan and Katie Smith for the first one in franchise history. Very scary for a 7-footer on skates and skating that well.
Dude. Well, I mean, look where he's from.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure he skated.
very true, but still.
But full disclosure, Jim had said to me, he goes, "Oh, I watched Utah's debut." I was like, "Oh, how was it?" He goes, "Laurie Markkinen on skates." I went, "Wait, what?" Because of course, Laurie Markkinen being a Cavaliers player, I remember how big Laurie Markkinen was, and now I thought about skates, and I went, "Oh, that's some Yeti shit, Jim." Ow!
Wait, what was that? Damn it.
Dick. Anyway.
Because I saw they were back in now.
When I get yelled at for not hearing my wife speak, I'm going to tell her of this and that there is video evidence. Let her fucking yell at you.
I'm here so I won't get fined.
You're going to get a foot in your ass is what you're going to get. Do the couch. Oh my God. So it's also NBA Hall of Fame induction weekend. Vince Carter goes in. How many guys from North Carolina are in there?
Good question. Because Chauncey Billups
billion.
went in, but Vince Carter was the headliner.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, speaking of the NBA Hall of Fame in the state of North Carolina, did you happen to see the big commits over the weekend to Duke University?
I did not.
Carlos Boozer's twins.
Oh, I did see that.
James, I remember their old man in college.
I met his old man in Michael's last game against the Cavs.
And you were in college, right?
Yeah.
We're fucking old.
Let's see. North Carolina players in the College Basketball Hall of Fame: Billy Cunningham, Bob McAdoo, James Worthy, Michael Jordan, Phil Ford, Charlie Scott, Sam Perkins, Bobby Jones, Antoine Jameson, Larry Miller, Tyler Hansbrough, Vince Carter. Of those, Cunningham, McAdoo, Worthy, Jordan, Scott, Jones, and Carter in the Hall of Fame. Oh, yeah, Larry Brown, Ben Carnevale, Frank McGuire, Dean Smith, and Roy Williams, all also in both the College Basketball and Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame.
That's crazy. Look, and Vince Carter is getting his number retired by both the Brooklyn Nets and I think more fitting. Well, no, not really, because he went to finals in Jersey when they were the New Jersey Nets. But I think more fitting, though, is that Toronto will raise his number 15 to the rafters this year. Crazy him and T-Mac were on the same team.
Yeah. As cousins.
Did you ever hear how they found out they were related?
I've heard this story years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, crazy that their grandmother or something called them from a family reunion of some kind. That's craziness. The only other thing in the blast I wanted to ask you about, sports-wise anyway, before we get to our favorite segment of the night. It shocked that Robert Saleh was the first coach fired?
A little bit, but we all know that was a power play move. I mean, absolutely not deserving to be the first one fired. But again, it is what it is.
Okay. So, James, we're trying to keep this under 2 hours tonight because it is a Sunday night. It is a school night, as it were. I think we know what time it is.
Would you shut up and just push the button already?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YC Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the YZ Translator. It is the best segment of the night because it is the last segment of the night. We are over 50 translators in this joint venture, as it were, and we now have the tradition of the Chiron that James makes up and doesn't tell me about, and he likes to see me laugh, proverbially, figuratively, and literally, my ass off. So, James, if you would please unveil the Chiron.
Inside
go.
joke.
Okay.
We won't explain it on the air. Mike
No.
will know this immediately.
Okay.
And this is the only time we ever get to call the translator because we thought about this and we talked about this and it was just too good to pass up.
Oh, it was too good to pass up. Make sure you tell him.
Tell him, shit, I'm going to show him.
Very good. Very good. So, James, it's beholden upon me to give the first name of the night. And I am going to give you one who I think you will be well acquainted with. And James, your first name in the YZ Translator, and I will put the perfect respect on his name, is Nicholas Jamal Chubb.
To quote a very wise man, one Mr. William Madison, stay as long as you can. In this case, though, it's not graduating from the 4th grade. It is not suiting up on game day as long as you can.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Did you really think he would come back and see this after all the promise that they had last year? Because we all thought if he came back anywhere near 75% of how he normally is running this level of talent back, you could basically put them at or near the top of the division and a serious contender to, against Kansas City and Buffalo in that in the conference.
Well, let's say this about the Browns season. If they figure out how to block for him, it might get easier. Because a lot of Stefanski's offense is, what's its face? Play action derived. And right now they don't have any really real threats in the backfield.
I got to say that Pierre Strong showed me a lot in the second half, and it was a close game. And I get it. I get Philly's defense is very good, but Pierre Strong had himself a game in the second half because they weren't getting anything done in the first half with anybody that they were trotting out there.
No, I got you. Who you got for me there, boss?
Mike, we're going football heavy with you. Both of yours are going to be in the NFL. The first one I'm going to give you, I want you to have a little bit of fun with. We'll get a little bit more serious in the second one. Your first name tonight in the YZ Translator, Jerry Jones.
I want to know why a GM/owner of a football team should be the poster boy for the Alzheimer's medicine they should have given Bruce Willis. He's horrible. I mean, you haven't sniffed a conference championship game for 30 years? because Barry Switzer had the team Jimmy put together, and you were too much of a fucking crybaby to understand that somebody was better personnel than you? Sell the team, sell the building, go the fuck away. Go the fuck away.
You want to talk about Alzheimer?
You know what he looks like? He looks like the evil villain in every Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fucking cartoon.
I could see that.
Or if you prefer, Mr. Burns on speed.
He looks like if Pinky had taken the Mutant Ninja Turtles mutagen and turned into a human with that big fucking head.
That was the brain. Had the big head. But it had to be Pinky because Narf, he's an idiot.
Oh, how lovely it is.
That I remember that shit.
The only
Yeah,
reason people are paying attention to you right now is the eye candy on your sidelines, your stadium, and trying to see how miserable things are going to get with your record-setting quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a better facility than the Browns, and they got better eye candy on the sidelines. Although the better eye candy for the Browns are in the stands. Remember, there used to be a website about 5 or 6 years ago, hotchicksandbrownsjerseys.com, because there's nothing better.
It's even better than the team. Jim, your second and final name in tonight's Wisey Translator. I'm going to go baseball with you now. And your second name is Bryce Harper.
Next to Ohtani, he's the best hitter in the game, I feel. But they need to keep that core together because otherwise we're going to have 3 or 4 more years of and that's just a random day in the middle of May on a strike 3 call for him.
Yes.
I will say he is the most entertaining player in baseball, and I think that's no doubt by a country mile.
Not at all.
Because the thing is, you either love him or you hate him, but every time he has a rant, it's highly entertaining, and you have to watch it.
Tis. What do you got me to wrap it up there, sir?
To close up tonight, we talked about it very briefly before we came on the air tonight. Michael, your second and final name in the Wisey Translator, and you can probably tell with the drama in my voice, Aiden Hutchinson.
That's rough. I hope they got him to the hospital in time to not have any issues. For those who don't,
I read it was emergency and immediate surgery.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Aiden Hutchinson broke his tibia today in the Detroit Lions massive win against the Dallas Cowboys. Speedy recovery. It's game's better when you're on the field. But I think Detroit's still set up to do well. And Jim, I'm going to let you wrap because I had a message. I got to head out. But I will say this next Sunday.
So the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the stupidest combination I ever heard in my life.
We will actually be back with you guys next Saturday, although that might be tentative. We might actually go next Sunday. We kind of like these Sunday shows here. We might run with this for a little bit. Mike, I will wrap this up here very quickly, but it will be our 2024-2025 NBA preview. We asked Patrick to come on. Patrick, unfortunately, is not going to be able to join us, but the good news for Patrick, he's currently in a show with his theater career. So we wish Patrick nothing but the best. Mike's going to head
Absolutely.
on out.
Gotta fly.
And we will see you guys next week. We're sorry to kind of cut it short that fast, but everybody have yourselves a very, very good night, and enjoy your week and enjoy some really good baseball. I'm actually going to be very on the fence for tomorrow night because what do I watch? I've got the Guardians and I got the Bills on Monday Night Football playing at the exact same time. So I'm screwed one way or the other. I tried the live stream for the hockey game. It may not have gone the way that I wanted to, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do the Blues opener on Tuesday night because that game will start nearly an hour ahead of where the Sabres were, and I was essentially out of gas by the third period. So you back that up an extra hour. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that. So we will see you guys next Saturday or next Sunday. We will play that by ear. And we will actually have big announcements for the 3-year anniversary show coming up on Friday the 25th. So everybody take care. We'll see you soon.